how are ya? It's Monday, and it is a holiday. It is Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday observed. So I hope that those of you who got a day off enjoyed it and talked to your kiddos about the reason for the day of remembrance. And if you had to work, I'm sorry you had to work, and I hope you didn't have to work too hard. And um, hope that you get a chance to sit home to get home and talk to your kids about why this holiday is important. I went to Hairspray, the musical, the Broadway musical, and the first time they said a word that we could not get away with saying in today's world, like, and it's not the bad one, it's the one that is just dated. It's a very dated term. I was like, okay, why is this word allowed? Why has this not been boycotted? What are we doing here? And then to see that the entire performance is based on um, segregation. You know, it was when the kids were in the 60s, and you think about it, and it's like not that long ago. Like, our parents grew up in that time. Our grandparents definitely were in that time, um where they were talking about the music. They would have it was called racial music, and they would have one day a week where they could have racial music, and they wouldn't let anybody of color be on the show for the best kids in town. And it's so sad. It's just so sad, to really just think about that and how people were. And uh, it's just a very, very sad part of our history. And I hope that we continue to move forward. In so many ways, it feels like we were moving backwards. um it's just a time of a lot of change, I guess, in our society, and it's a long time coming. um so it really just put it in perspective for me to just say, wow. And then I can't imagine how much energy it would take to be one of the performers for that show. There's so much singing and dancing and energy, and it's just like, whoa. But our seats were floor, and I'm barely 5 foot tall. Okay, so unless I'm like literally in the first 2 or 3 rows, I can't see anything. And I mean, I'm saying third row is even questionable, because it's like if I'm in the aisle, like if I'm at the end, it's okay because I can kind of look. If I'm in the inner aisle, a couple of times I've gotten lucky if it's like on a diagonal, and so those are the most expensive. So we don't always get to go out. Well, when we saw Chelsea Handler, we had balcony, and it was just the end of the balcony, so it was a two, and I loved that because my husband's 6 foot tall, just like so many guys are, just right there, there's a foot between us, so his experience is totally different. So when I came in here with in there with my big old mofo immobilizer splint, where because I have to have my elbow like at, and as my elbow is outward, it's like, and then it has to be kept out and up. So I have the two pillows that build it up from me, so it's up at a 30-degree angle and like out to like 10 degrees. And then my hand is on the squishy black ball sack that I'm supposed to squeeze every 10 times every hour. I keep squeezing it too hard when I'm in public, and then I fling my black ball. I'm like, oh, I've lost my black ball. I gotta get my black ball. You know me. You know me. Can't take me anywhere. But anyway, um, as we walked down, theater seats were made for when people didn't have a diet of carbs and were not, big. And I'm fat. I'm not saying I'm not. I mean, I am, oh gosh, 50 to 60 pounds heavier than when I got married 22 years ago. We also celebrated our 22-year wedding anniversary. So I asked my youngest son to take a picture of me and my husband before we went out, and for our anniversary. And I was like, "Can you tell me the angle so that I don't look as fat?" And he's like, unless you want me to go back in time 20 years, there's nothing I can do. I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you. You're the reason I'm not taking you out to dinner with us. Because when we started going out to nice restaurants, we couldn't find babysitters. We took those old shits with us to the nice restaurants. So then they thought that they could go for the rest of their lives. And it's like, no, you're making the difference between, $150 dinner to be 400, so you can stay your asses at home. But anyway, um, so I'm fat, and there's not anything I can do about it at this moment in time. I need to get back to my fighting weight. That's fine. But so I'm fat, and I've got this big ass immobilizer. So going into the theater seats that were made for, like, the 80-pound woman, um, like, I was like, I don't know that I can sit in a seat, because I knew that, the seats are so tight in the theater that you touch the next person, fat overflows. So I was like, I don't know that I can with this, and they walked down with me, and they made sure that I could be on the outer side, but still that was with my, because that's in the right, and it was right in. So they were like, I don't think that's going to work for you. They said because it's full, they didn't have another seat they could give me where we could be together. But if I decided I was uncomfortable, they could accommodate me somewhere. So just let them know. So I did it for like about 45 minutes, and it was just putting my arm in such a bad position. It started cramping so bad. So I went out and I asked. I was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, I just can't. I was like, I don't even mind just watching it in the hall from here. I just can't sit in that little seat with the angle up. It's just killing me. And they're like, no, no, no. Let's see what we can do. And they put like a chair with, the stable grandma and grandpa chairs. They're wooden with the two armrests, the ones you don't respect until you're old and fat. Yeah, they gave me one of those, and it was like six inches from the next person. So there was a few of us that they accommodated apparently, and they just added these chairs, like right center, um, center from the balcony over. It was awesome. I loved it. I had this incredible seat, and so I'll be stuck downstairs, but that's fine. But it was kind of cool to be able to see both angles of how I had it. It was down and then up. And when I was down there, not only could I not freaking see, but the guy in front of me, like, he had like a Brian Koberger head, like the Idaho turd burglar. I mean, his head is huge, and so was the guy in front of me, and he even resembled, the Koberger. So I'm like sitting there going, oh my gosh, I cannot get this out of my mind. And his head is so freaking big, and his mom, his little mom, was the typical, where they made the seats the size for, right? So she has this little 75-year-old little bird, and she's just boogieing in the seat, right? Well, my mind, first of all, I'm like, oh, it looks like Koberger. Oh gosh, he's got to shave his neck. Like, his head is the size of a freaking light bulb. How did this woman birth him? This had to have been an adoption story, because she couldn't have even carried this kid with this head like this. Like, what happened when she started dating the man? Did she see the size of the head that he had? Did she consider it, or was this an adoption? Because she could not have went to term with something with a head this big. Like, would a doctor have intervened, like if they saw them like dating and like eating dinner like back in the 50s or 60s, and been like, it's beautiful that you guys are dating, but please don't breed, because you'll never be able to survive a birth of him? Or was that in the time when C-sections were better, and they're like, well, might just have one child? I don't know. I honestly, that's what I have to think about, because I can't frickin' see the show. That's what goes through my head. And then whenever he wanted a little drink from mommy packed a fucking picnic. So, it's like he'd turn his big light bulb head, and mommy would go, and get into her purse of wonder and give him, a little sip of juice and a couple little crackers and shit. And I'm like, I can't, because then when you lean your head over to your mom, and your mom's boogie woogie, and I can't see anything. It's like, dude, I have to lean like this, and I have to be up like this with my mofo thing. And so it's like, I just had to get up before I bit him. I do bad things sometimes when I get frustrated in crowds. So it's like, I really just needed to just get up. And it just worked so well to just be upstairs. And now, and of course, I've told you guys I do have PTSD. So that really gets aggravated in crowds and places I can't see. So like the whole experience of being up and above was so good because I could really see things and see the exits and see what's going on and understand who's around me and why they're there. And it just, it was a whole different experience. So I told the hubs, I'm like, you know what? This is what we need to do. Like, we don't even need to be like limiting ourselves because we can't go because my short, fat ass can't see anything. We can go and be in the upper area and I'll do just fine. But obviously, it has to be in the upper area where, you know, I can see. I'm very high maintenance. Very, very high maintenance. And my thing is, here's my thing, okay? If you buy a seat, okay, and you're at a concert. Say you're at a concert, okay? We're not even talking about the little inside theaters, you know, from yesteryear. If you're at a freaking concert and the first 50 rows or whatever are all folding chairs, and you buy a seat in a folding chair, sit down, do not stand up. I understand at the end, at the very end, when everybody is done performing, you can stand up and have an ovation, but I cannot deal with when people stand up. I mean, I had a perfectly decent 12th row seat for Michael Bublé. Okay? Who thinks that somebody's going to stand up at Michael Bublé? Oh, had to be in front of me. Had to be with this little freaking misogynist creep who was just, I mean, he was treating his wife like a freaking bowling ball. Not even grabbing her butt. Like, we're talking, he was grabbing with a gripping, okay? I mean, so bad. So bad. Just nonstop. And she looked at him all giddy and everything. I'm like, because the first time I was like, you want me to clock him for you? I'm looking at her. And then she's just like, and I'm like, oh no, you accept this? And then it was like her mother on the other side. So it's like, I'm like, dude. And he was just like, make it out. And he was shorter than her, very bald. And I'm just like, getting all fired up about short men and inappropriate grabbing and all this stuff because I can't see. If they would have just all sat down, I would not have had to have those thoughts about those people at all. Wouldn't have had to be like, okay, is the mom in on this? Are they gonna have a freaking mommy daughter thing? Like, why is he doing this with the mom there and getting himself all warmed up? Like, what's going on? Okay, so that's the thing. And so a very bad thing happened years and years and years ago. And I was at this outdoor event. And we had paid like $350 for our freaking second row seats in the freaking folding chair. And the concert starts, and these a-holes in front of me, a crowd of 5 of them, stand right up and make it known that they're going to stand right up. And I'm like, looking at them, I'm looking at security. I'm like, you're not going to let this go, are you? And security just kind of, looks away. I'm like, oh, no. And so then they start falling because they're drunk. So they start falling back on me with their metal chairs because they're in front and they're like standing there boogie woogieing with their butts and then collapsing on their chairs, and their chairs keep flying back at me. So like I'm going to have my toes like removed by the next time this folding chair comes back at me. So instead of having my toes removed, I, in a snap second, grabbed that folding chair and unfolded it, and used it as a weapon to the 5 men. And were like, sit down or I'm going to shove this up your asses. And it was bad. It was really embarrassing that I had done something. I didn't even realize that I had done it by the time I'd done it. No, I wasn't drinking. It's just, I just do that. And so the security came and I told him, I'm like, look at this. We paid $350 each for the seats. I'm not going to look at their asses the whole time. And so like the men were like crying with each other and everything about me being threatening and violent, and they wanted me removed and everything. And luckily the security was like, you guys have to sit down. This is not to be standing up. We'll allow it if the people don't mind, but why are you, So I'm like, right on, right? You're on my side. It took that for, that to be. I had about freaking 200,000 people then giving me this dirty look and shaking their heads at me. And I'm thinking, how would they felt if they were about to get their toes removed from folding chairs and everything else and have somebody fall on them and everything? Fortunately, my husband is very nice and understanding, and he just, tried there, and just, he just tried to not laugh his best that he could. He just, he was nice. He didn't, he didn't run and hide, probably like my first husband would have. He would have. But my second husband, he just, he lets me do what I need to do due to my disorder, being Italian and Scottish. And so he was like, okay, all right. He's like, you're good. And it was just hard having to have the five men in front just pout and like, look back at each other and me and everything, and then everybody else. And it's like they don't know the story. They don't know. And it's like, when you're wearing like sandals and stuff, and you know what it feels like when people, run a shopping cart into it and everything. And it's like, okay, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have a broken foot, removed toe, whatever. I'm not gonna do it. Okay? No, sit down. Just sit down. And that's the way it needs to be. And yes, it's because I'm old and grumpy, that I think people need to sit down at concerts. So there are places where we know and we do just get balcony just to avoid my issues, and I have no problem with that. I don't need to be on the floor. I don't need to be in general admission. I have even told the hubs that, what, if we need to look at me being, in handicap parking or handicap seating and stuff sometimes for me because of my PTSD, I'm not opposed. I don't want my experience ruined by not being able to see and then getting very angry at people and it's not their fault, except for if you're, being stupid. But I just don't understand that. It's like you get a seat, sit down. The whole outer area of the place where we were at has was at this huge ass winery, and so you can sit down, dance, whatever, and there's all that area. It had always been seating is seated, except for that one day. Now all the people will probably talk about it. Do you remember that day when that chick tried to shove the folding chair up people's butts? Like, whatever. But anyway, back to the Watts Island. 29 was put back up. I had technical difficulties with that. Sorry about that. So 29 was a mess, but I think that I covered back up where I had abruptly left on 29 and covered it back on 30. Thank you. What time is it? Okay, thank you so much. So I went to 30, and because the really important information and thing that I found was where it said that Cece was positive for amphetamine. Now, with that, I made a community post. And I said that, has anybody else heard of that? Because I've already reached out to several creators and asked them. And my friend who's a forensic nurse who lives here on Watts Island, who's, is just amazing and smart as can be. And she had not heard of it either. So I've already reached out to several people. So, somebody took what I put, on my thing, one of, I'm not going to say the name, because, I know the person and they email me. So it's not, it's nothing, nothing bad or anything. It's just, that when it was posed, it was basically exactly what I said. So, it came back, and because then, another creator was like, did you just write this? Is this your username? Because it was exactly what I said. So, I wrote in the comment, I wrote to the person who wrote the comment, because in our next emails she'll probably say she saw it, whatever, because it's just what I said is I said when you write the information that I put out there, please just put it like say that you saw or Tabitha Jane, and then do the @ symbol so then I see it and I know who's all in the loop. because it was really confusing to a couple of people because it was literally, where what I had written. So they were like, okay, why are you writing this over there? Like it's not like you're not, like it looked like I was just talking in the comments, and it's like, no, everybody knows my usernames. That I have the one from my other channel, the real C word of Brookline, and I have my Tabitha Jane. So you guys know those as my two. So if you take the information that I have, just it doesn't belong in a person's comments thing anyway, because then that's taking away from what they're putting up as their information. And people like to keep their threads pretty straight to what they say. So that would have been something that that creator would have maybe not addressed there anyway. So I would, at this point, I would just please ask to wait until I'm finished with this Discovery service series, and we do some lives. I have two great co-hosts, as you know, that did my last live with me, and they're on board. They're 100% on board. They think like me. They're gonna, you know, um, know exactly what you're talking about. If you refer to something, they're right on it. So at this point, I would just, instead of going to another creator and asking them, you know, if they know what I'm talking about or whatever, just wait until we do that together is what I would ask for right now. Or if you do, or somebody else is, talking about it or whatever, or you want to mention something that I said, just please do, just put the at symbol Tabitha Jane so I see it and then I'm in the loop. And then there's less confusion with it. Um, the two theories that I would say, on that I'm working with about the amphetamine, it would, what I would be saying is of course hearsay, what I would be saying is of course alleged, but if you think about the complaints that were made about her behavior, about Cece's behavior, and you think about who was complaining about her behavior the most and saying that she needed to use the product to be able to deal with a child that's so hyper, well, what would you give a child who's hyper? Okay, you think about it, and it's a drug that, or there's a few drugs that are given to children who are deemed hyperactive, and they could feasibly pop as an amphetamine. The fact that it wasn't in Bella leads me towards that. It leads me towards they were possibly giving her Adderall or Ritalin. Now, both would be very, very questionable to be giving a child who had barely turned 3 that medication. Um, so I'm very much speculative on it. I mean, obviously, if we go down the nefarious road, you say that the girls were possibly poisoned before whatever. Maybe they were injected with something that would have affected their heart. I don't know, and that is alleged. That is hearsay. That is where I'm going with it. Just trying to further research it and make me understand it in a way that I can speak further on it. Um, it was ingested. It was in her liver tissue. If it was not, then you could say that okay, it was something that was in the oil. So many things are dismissed as to what were in both of the girls as toxicology as being in the oil. Well, I don't see why they would have tested for them and then just dismissed everything they came up positive for. I Why test? Why not put in there and say we can't test due to this, and have it signed by an expert or whatever, and and speak to that, because it's ridiculous to have all of these things that really scared people, thinking that the girls were possibly still alive and swallowed that stuff. And I don't know that they weren't, quite frankly, when I see the toxicology reports. I really don't. I don't know what happened, and I think it's disgusting, and it absolutely disgusting that these children were a result of what was happening in the adults' lives that was very much inappropriate. And my other thought is, yeah, I admitted that I was wrong because I had not seen that there was any proof of an ultrasound actually being done. Okay. So I was right and wrong because, as a friend pointed out, I said she hadn't been to a doctor and had an ultrasound. Okay. Okay. So, but I'm not going to be like, I was right on technicality. No, 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 no. I'm okay to say, no, I was wrong because there was an ultrasound. Now let's talk about that ultrasound because it's interesting to me that if it was, and so far I can definitively say that that was the first ultrasound that was done. The first ultrasound that was done was 5 days prior to whatever happened to her that night. She took somebody with her. She didn't want to be alone with her husband to see their baby for the first time because of the gender reveal stuff. They could have written it down and given it to either of them for the envelope. They didn't need NA to be there. Okay? If you look at it and you say, the dates don't add up, the measurements don't add up, the last time that they were intimate and whatever, and supposedly with her infertility issues and whatnot, and with the speculation of how she was probably, maybe, allegedly, assumably, living that lifestyle, and her husband was at home, and her estimated time of conception was when she was pictured with somebody else, and she's wearing a very sexy leopard dress and out there to impress. Look at it. The first time he gets her alone to talk about whatever he saw on that ultrasound, she didn't make it out alive. Why was she trying to make sure that she didn't make herself available to have an in-person conversation with him? Because what was on that ultrasound probably made him think, even though everybody thinks that he wasn't that smart, he was smart. He was smart enough to know that that probably was not his child. If you look at it and you look at whatever happened, whatever rage, whatever blind rage hit him, just like my blind rage when I tried to shove a folding chair up 5 people's bungholes, it's that flash white rage that some people get, that I get. And it's just something I've learned, to control, as I've gotten older, and, I can't, really, take on a whole bar full of people anymore. Can't win my bar fights anymore. But, it's that kind of flash rage where you don't even realize what you did until you did it. That's what I think happened that night to her. I don't understand what happened to the kids. I never will. He could get off with a battered spouse syndrome, with a good attorney, with everything that we've seen, with all of the lies, the deception, whatever. It'd have to take one darn good lawyer that could see everything, because Chris was some kind of a freaking ostrich who had his head in the sand. And I don't think to this day he has seen what we see. I don't think he wants to. I really don't. I think that he's become used to being institutionalized, and he was used to being criticized, demeaned, and controlled while he was with her. So he went from that to just a little bit of fresh air to now being comfortable being institutionalized. When they withheld his letters from when he quasi-admitted something to sentencing, he was made to feel that everybody in the world was against him and not one person stood for him. The public defender or whatever that was supposed to defend him should be disbarred. He didn't even get the letters from his parents. Those were put on his bed when he returned to his cell after sentencing. It's a violation of inmate rights. They had no right to hold that. He did not have the information. He was probably desperate guilty. I'm sure he's guilty of something. I have no doubt that he probably unalived his wife in a blind rage. Like I say, add it up. Add it up. Look at how things don't make sense. Would you wait so long to go for your first prenatal visit with your husband until you're supposedly 15 weeks? But as the measurements show, she was not that far along. But if you were, would you wait that long? I mean, in 2018, they could definitely hear the heart rate at 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. They could even, hear it sooner. I mean, she's a big bottomed woman, so sometimes the baby gets, lower in those big bottomed women. And so it's harder to hear the heart rate. Where I have no ass at all, I'm flat as a pancake on the back. The baby would go straight out, so you could hear the heart rate easier. Um, People's anatomy depends on that, but you would think, why wouldn't he have wanted to be there, and why wouldn't she have wanted him to be there to hear that heart rate that first time? And with technology, they can often, do the basic little 6 week, 8 week ultrasound, show the little peanut. Why wasn't he there? Because she was skewing the dates, and she was making damn sure that she was never alone with him, so that he couldn't ask the questions that needed to be asked. She got on a plane as quick as she could and stayed out there. Oh, to what? To go and tell the man that probably was the father of the baby that, hey, let's do this. Let's do this. Because she was running from the big frickin' mess she made in Colorado, just as she had once ran from the big mess she made in North Carolina. And people poo-poo that mess in North Carolina. They say, oh, yeah, it was a credit pull, and she wasn't found guilty of anything, and blah, blah. No, that's not the one that we're talking about. That's not it. That's not it. We're talking about the big old sum of money that her employer, by the grace of God, decided not to pursue. Let her go on, go her own way, and stay away. And I'm sure everything was fine, and she laid low. But then when she's popping up looking like she's on top of the world and everything, I'm sure he's like ready to give her a call and be like, hey, looks like you're living large and you owe me about 50 large. You know? So those are my thoughts. Those are the kinds of things that we'll go over when we do some lives. But I really want to just keep pecking away and getting all of the facts out here while I'm still the one-armed woman, where that's what I can do. And so we have all of the facts in front of us. This has been a huge learning curve for me. I learned in reverse on this case. I was listening to what other people were saying to me based on where I would see something that I was suspicious of, and I would go and try and find the answer. And I was trying my best to be responsible when I saw something, and I would try and vet it, see where it came from, see if the person who put it up there was a reliable source. And I made the mistake of thinking that somebody was reliable based on their profession. And I didn't know that was mainly just a gossip channel. And so I had to go back and learn it for myself. And now it is going to be great, because when we have these discussions, we can say, okay, yeah, well, we saw that here, and this is where this stems from. And until I start seeing, reliable addendums to the autopsy and whatnot, and everything, I'll go by what I see, and then I'll be happy to show the supplementals as I get them. But when I get through this series is when I want to do the lives. So bear with me, and just know that I reach out to the other creators and stuff too. So when they see the same question, they'll see it came from me. But if you are talking, please do at Tabitha Jane if you've taken the information you learned from my channel, please. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on Watts Part 34, if you can believe it or not, which is Discovery page 1272. and it is page 1155 in the 1690. So we're getting there. We're just plugging away. And let's see here. Okay. Here we are. And we were going to start over here. We're still in the we just got done with the coder interview, and we are at the FBI in an unclassified supplement. And it says here that Christopher Watts was interviewed at the Frederick Police Department. Also present in the interview was CBI agent, Special Agent Tamburglar Lee. And after being advised the identity of the interviewing agents and the nature of the interview, Chris provided the following information. And then it has another little disclaimer about the recording things. And then it says, at the onset of the interview, Special Agent Coder of the FBI that the interview would be recorded. Chris agreed to provide a statement. Okay. And then this is exactly what was stated. So that's too repetitive to honestly read again until we come over here and we say that we see this is new on page 204. And it says, Chris initially repeated his statement from 8/14/2018, wherein he told SA Coder that he and Shanann discussed a potential divorce in the morning, and when they finished talking, Chris went to work. Okay, so that's where we got all the way there. Now, it says Chris stated that he was involved in an extramarital affair with a woman named Nikki. And he stated that he and Shanann spoke about marital issues, but he wasn't able to admit to her that he was involved sexually with Nikki. And it says that Chris continued to state that he did not do anything to those girls. And it says at one point in his interview, Chris asked if he could speak with his father. Chris was aware that his father was in the building and asked if he could speak with his father. S.A. Coder and S.A. Lee allowed Chris's father to enter the room and talk with Chris. Chris's father was allowed to enter the room with Chris. Chris asked, "Are you going to leave this in here or no?" as he motioned towards the handheld digital recorder that was sitting in front of him on the table. S.A. Coder told Chris that the recorder would be staying in the room, and Chris said, "Okay." Chris's father sat down next to Chris and they began talking. Chris told his father that he failed a polygraph test. Chris's father asked, "Is there any reason you shouldn't?" Chris's father asked if there was anything you want to tell me? What's going on? I love Papa Ronnie, but he mumbles really bad. So Chris told his father, I don't want to protect her. I don't know what else to say. Chris's father asked him, "Did you hurt him?" And Chris replied, "Yeah." Chris told his father, "I didn't hear anything. Like, I was downstairs, and then I came, back up when they were gone." Chris's father said, "She freaked out about separation?" Huh? And it even says in there, unintelligible, so I'm telling you, I'll have to pop it running on my mumbles. So anyway, Chris stated, "She laid back down when I was downstairs, and I heard a commotion upstairs, but I didn't think anything of it." Chris and his father continued to discuss. Chris stated that in her heart, I know that she knew about the affair. She was just waiting for me to say something and for me to deny it again, and she just lost it. And I agree with that. And then it says S.A. Coder and S.A. Lee return to the room. Okay, and this is when, if you remember on the visual, and Chris has his hands in his head, and he's trying to talk to his dad. And this makes sense now because he didn't want that recorder in the room. He wanted to talk to his father freely. He wanted to say, look, this is a situation, And look at that, they wouldn't leave the recorder out. That's interesting because they said that they'd let him talk to his father. They didn't say, yeah, we're going to keep you on a recording device. And that's where we hear that recording device, and you can hear the little mumbling and whispering. And then it says, so hold on. Boom, go ahead and keep in here. I'm going to shut the door to keep Boo in here while you guys do that. I'm going to shut the door to keep Boo in here while you do that. I'm going to shut the door to keep Boo in here so when you do that. Hey? Because they're moving stuff. Sorry, we finally got that tree taken down, and they've got to get it in the garage, and I don't want my Boo to run down and get in the middle of all them moving all that stuff. Okay, so that's the part, and so they were listening. They were absolutely 1000% listening, not just on that recorder. I don't know what else they had. I don't know if they had an intercom for there, but at the speed of light, Tamburglar comes in, and we are all calling her that because I started calling her the Hamburglar because she has that she has white and black mom sweater on, and the kind of 3/4 with the diagonal front ends, and it sped with motion into that room like bat wings, man. She just flew in there, and all you see is this whip of white and black with that. And so I said, she's a Hamburglar. But then, our friend down in the land of Down Under, he topped it off and said the Tamburglar. So I gotta say, the Tamburglar has a better ring to it than the Hamburglar. So I had to go with his thing. And I love his little icons of her. But I mean, she swooped in, and she just started, and then she started, just massaging him, and like, all right, okay, just get this out. What do you want to tell us? Come on, come on, come on. I mean, it's just weird. Like, if any man did that to a woman, he would be known as the biggest perv on the planet, and the whole thing would have been thrown out. It was inappropriate the way that she was touching him. So anyway, a Tamburglar gets in the room and asks Chris if he would repeat the things that he said to his father. Chris stated that after he had his early morning conversation with Shanann, she knew what was going on with the affair. He continued to deny his affair and continued to tell her that he was at a Rockies game. Chris stated that he went downstairs and began to pack for work. He heard a couple things upstairs but didn't think anything of it. He went upstairs to talk to her again and saw on the monitor that Bella's covers were pulled off and that she was laying there. Chris stated that he freaked out and ran in and got on top of Shanann. He stated that Cece was blue. He stated, and I did the same thing to her. Chris stated that he felt horrible for what he did to Shanann and for what she did to the kids. Chris stated that Shanann killed both girls by choking them, and he did the same thing to her. Chris provided information about the girls. He stated that Shanann was in a hole in the ground that he dug up, and the girls are in an oil tank that he placed them in. Chris marked the burial site of Shanann on a map. Chris stated that he buried his wife in a t-shirt and underwear. The girls were put into the oil tank in their pajamas. Chris stated that he initially heard the commotion when he was downstairs and packing for work in the early morning. The sound didn't make him immediately go upstairs. He went upstairs and saw the baby monitor showing Bella's room. Bella was laying on the bed without covers. The video baby monitor cycled to show a shot of Cece's room, and that's when he saw Shanann on top of Cece choking her, and that is when he went into the room and choked Shanann, thereby killing her. Hold up, Boo-Boo. Chris stated Chris stated that he came into the room and pulled Shanann off of Cece and choked her. He motioned his arms with a motion that he pulled her down from his right to his left and pushed her down to the left and then choked her. S.A. Coder and S.A. Lee asked Chris if he was telling the truth, and he stated he was. S.A. Coder and S.A. Lee asked for Chris to confirm that his wife killed the girls first, and then he killed her. Chris stated that Shanann killed the girls, and then he killed her. Chris stated that he put Shanann in the ground and the girls in the tank because that is where he was going that day, and he didn't know what else to do. He stated that he didn't call 911 because he didn't know what else to do. For additional details related to the interview, refer to the audio-video recording maintained in the Frederick Police Department case file. Now, this is the version that I believe, but how can I believe this version when it shows us the night before, he was telling Coder straight up that he didn't have an affair. And that's the point, is that, he can look them straight in the eye and he can lie. But do you say that lying about infidelity is the same as lying about a murder? Now, on this handwritten thing, it says Salmon Fight credit card, N. Kessinger. Saturday Sandy Packers game, Rockies game, pool party Sunday night. And then ITER points something. And it says she, controlling, micromanagement, no trust, no let you, she made something, forgot you, maybe she made money and forgot you, kids dump off to mom, menu what she wants, you have to answer. And then it says you, so referring to him, you got your life back in North Carolina, knows kids, mom doesn't, asthma, didn't plan on bed, get you back to normal, defended a woman that didn't respect. Get the the magnifying glass back out. Didn't respect, defended a woman that didn't respect Yan. This should have been best time of marriage. You are passive and whatever. She started it. Accident, took care of kids. And then back over, like on the side of her, says love, house on market, her house, your house, something junction. You love her, talked and confided like never before or whatever. Long day, don't let her go down. And then it says Echo stores audio on something, distress recognition. Ooh. Echo stores audio on something, and it says distress recognition. So is that saying that the Echo will like start up if there's a distress, if it notices distress? We never heard what happened on those. We never saw what happened on her Apple Watch, which they located the two of them, which I always heard, oh, they never located or whatever. No, they have them. The Echo and everything. They've never said anything about what was heard on there. Isn't that interesting? And it says work truck every minute, and then Nikki text message 7 days. Oh no. Now it says Trent Bolt, date of birth, was interviewed at the Larimer County Sheriff's Department. In addition to S.A. Coder, Colorado Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Tamberger was also present during the interview. After being advised of the identity of the interviewing agents and the nature of the interview, Bolt provided the following information. And then there's this disclaimer. And then it says, Bolt stated he met Chris Watts online in 2017. Bolt was positive he met Chris Watts because of the recent media attention that Chris Watts was getting after his wife and daughters were found dead. This is very repetitive, so I'm just doing this fast. Then it says Bolt stated that he met Chris on a social media app. The app included GPS location that was meant for helping people meet each other. So like what, meetup, hookup, whatever that is. Tinder. Bolt stated that Chris Watts reached out to him first with a message that said, "Hey, how's your night going?" Bolt stated that at that time he thinks he was able to tell where Watts was geographically located based on information that the app provided. Bolt thought that Watts was in Loveland when he sent the message to Bolt. Bolt initially stated that he started a relationship with Watts, but then found out about his marriage and ended the relationship. Bolt stated that he used to have pictures of Watts wearing a green camouflage shirt with a lamp in the background. Bolt also stated that Watts listed himself as straight in his profile. There's 2 T's in straight in this thing too, so STT. Don't know what that is. Well, assuming that's straight. Well, maybe that's what the kids are calling it, STTRAGIHT. I don't know. Watts originally told Bolt that Watts, wasn't sure if he was straight or gay, but he did talk about having kids ages 2 and 4 years of age. Watts told Bolt originally that he wasn't ready to be out and known to the public as a gay man. Bolt stated that on their first meeting, both men knew why they were meeting, and it was just for the purpose of having sex. They met up in June of 2017 for the first time. Bolt stated that the first time he met Watts, they had a sexual encounter. Bolt described Watts as average build. Bolt saw that Watts was wearing adhesive patches on his body, and Watts described them to Bolt. Watts and Bolt talked a lot, and Bolt knew what Watts liked: hiking, camping, and movies. Bolt described Watts as having tribal tattoos on his back and arms. Bolt stated that Watts used dorky pickup lines with him. That's everything that was in the media. There's nothing there that he wouldn't have gleaned from that. During their first meeting, Bolt gave Watts an address, and Watts came to their address in 25 minutes. At the time, Bolt was living with his friends near the I-25 freeway and Highway 34 interchange. Bolt was staying with a friend named T.J. Jackson at the time. Bolt stated that Watts came to see him by driving a Ford F-250 truck. He stated that it was approximately a 2006 model. Watts was dressed in pajama-style clothing like sweatpants. Bolt stated that Watts was very shy at first. Now, off to the side, we know that's baloney because Chris Watts would not have taken his work truck to go on a hookup where the GPS sees every single thing that he does and time. We know that he wouldn't have. But both vehicles were made known in the media. Bolt stated that during their first meeting, Watts and Bolt performed oral sex on each other. After the sexual activity was over, Watts became panicked and left. Watts sent messages to Bolt apologizing for leaving abruptly. Watts and Bolt took a 2 to 3 week break from each other after that first meeting. In late July-August, Watts sent Bolt another message. Watts wanted to meet up with Bolt again, but Bolt was in Wyoming. In the second week of August, Bolt and Watts met again. Watts was driving a blue truck, and he came to meet Bolt at TJ's apartment again. Watts was wearing overalls, a sweater, t-shirt, and boots. Okay. Can you all imagine, and this is before he lost weight, can you imagine the image of Watts wearing um, a t-shirt, a sweater, overalls, and boots? Um, no. During their second meeting, Watts was still shy. Bolt thought that the meeting may have happened at 1:30 at night and possibly during the week. Watts was shy and could not give Bolt eye contact. Watts was soft-spoken. Watts and Bolt talked about Watts's daughters and his world. Watts told Bolt that if Bolt, ended up being a psycho, he might be able to meet him. If he ended up not being a psycho, he might be able to meet his Watts daughters. They continued to talk, and Bolt told him about Bolt's widow. Bolt stated that they did not have sex during their second meeting. Okay, so we're supposed to believe that they met and it was just a little romantic conversation with Christopher Watts wearing a t-shirt, a sweater, overalls, and he's telling this hookup at 1:30 in the morning about his daughters. Where would the girls be, and where would Shanann have been and allowed him to go out at 1:30 in the morning? 3 days after their second meeting, Watts comes to Bolt's apartment at TJ's address. They talked for 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so let's say devil's advocate. Let's say that maybe Shanann was out of town, and because they locked the doors on the girls' bedrooms anyway, he went out and took his work truck out at 1:30 in the morning for these Tinder-like hookups. You think neighbor Nate isn't going to tell on him? Okay, let's see if it's safe to open the door. We can see if it's okay now. Ooh, let's see. Let's see if it's clear for you. Let's see if we let you out, Little Panther. Is it safe for Boo to be out? Is it safe for Boo to be out? Okay, he is out. Well, that's what I was afraid of. Saw that as a possible thing. Have you accounted for all cats? Okay. I'm glad. She snuck out? No. And I just have the tree skirt in the washer. Okay? I'm recording, but. Well, no. What do you need washed? No, you're yours then, because the only thing I have is in the wash. It's just a tree skirt in the wash. So take your sheets out. Oh, no, it's no problem. All right, love you. Sorry, guys. I always have so much going on in the day. Okay, so I'm sure Ma Kisses was trying to hide in the Christmas tree cover thing, so they zipped her up and then found her in there. That's just exactly what I figured would happen, because Ma Kisses likes to go and try and hide in things and hide under covers and hide in things. And so I figured at least they didn't need Boo, and Scoundrel usually lays around after her dinner. So, all right, all the cats are accounted for, and we're talking about this Bolt character again. So anyway, in September, Watts and Bolt talked to each other using Bolt's real telephone number. They met at TJ's apartment again, and Bolt performed oral sex on Watts. Watts asked Bolt for Xanax pills from Bolt, and Bolt declined to give Watts pills. Oh, sure. Sure, buddy, sure. Because, wait, okay, so this is now, okay, so he wouldn't have been overweight because he had the stickers on. So he is supposedly now meeting on Tinder, wearing t-shirt, sweater, overalls, and a couple of silly stickers, and asking for Xanax. Okay. So then it says in late November, December, Bolt and Watts began to talk again. Oh, wait. In October, Bolt and Watts talked but did not meet up. Bolt eventually met a man that would become his boyfriend, and he decided to move on from Watts because Watts was only interested in sex. Okay. In late November, December, Bolt and Watts began talking again. Near Thanksgiving time, Bolt and Watts began talking again, and Bolt remembers Watts talking about his father. Watts stated that his relationship with his dad was rough because his father called Watts a Nancy boy. Okay. We know the Papa Ronnie is the ultimate grandfather, daddy. Their relationship was epic. Christopher and his dad were inseparable, to the effect that when Christopher went off to college out of the house, Papa Ronnie developed a little habit with cocaine because he missed his boy. They got along, they were pals, they were each other's best friends. I don't think that Papa Ronnie would call him a Nancy boy with his mumbling. Nancy boy? No, you did not call him a Nancy boy. Whatever a Nancy boy is. Anyway, in December, Bolt got a text from Watts wishing Bolt a Merry Christmas. On New Year's, Watts texted Bolt and told him to be careful and get a designated driver and to be safe. After New Year's 2018, Bolt and Watts met up again near the I-25 and Highway 35 interchange near Ulta Beauty Supply Store. They spelled it ALTA. Pretty sure it's a Ulta. ULTA, but anyway. They talked and Watts tried to have sex, but Bolt denied him. A few days later, Watts and Bolt met again in a Buick LaCrosse sedan that was gunmetal silver and approximately a 2012 model. Watts had his daughters with him. Oh, okay, so Watts now has the Wisconsin Mobile, the Buick LaCrosse sedan, the official car of Wisconsin Karens, and he's now leaning up for sex, and he had his daughters with him. Okay. And it was gunmetal silver, a Buick LaCrosse sedan. So he was Buicking with his daughters, and he introduced his daughters to Bolt and told his girls to introduce yourselves to Bolt. Okay, so it's a few days after New Year's when Bolt just denied him for sex. So let's say this. Bella had just turned 4. Cece was still 2. And we're supposed to believe that Christopher Watts is Buicking and turns around and says, introduce yourselves. Mm-hmm. Because after being denied sex, you would want to go and Buick up with your girls and do that. Bolt stated that Celeste was the cutest little girl and melted my heart. Well, she is adorable. Bolt thought that Celeste was 2 to 3 years old at the time, and Celeste had a sippy cup and was bundled in the cold weather. Celeste asked for a baba, which Bolt understood meant a pacifier. Bolt heard Bella ask if she could sleep with you and Mommy tonight. Bolt understood this to mean that Watts was still with his wife. Okay, dude. Shanann Watts was very proud of what she blamed on Baby Wise, and she blamed that Baby Wise on her ideas for locking the kids up, and she started day 1 with Celeste, and we saw how that was turning out with her disposition. So that meant that the rain machines and everything, the girls were locked up from 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. And now, by the sounds of it, perhaps Christopher Watts went around with his janitorial keys and unlocked the bedrooms for them to free themselves to go over and lay in the bed and watch their mother get ready for 2 hours. Never, never was it an option for her to say, "Can I sleep with you and mommy tonight?" Because it didn't happen, except for when that one time when it was a good pitch, apparently, to say that the girls, or one of them, slept with them because they were sick. It was such an oddity that it was placed in a Facebook post. It wasn't like the rest of us who, I don't know, sometimes I'd have basically grandma's feather bed going on. Oh, anyway. Bolt understood this to mean that Watts was still with his wife. Bolt asked Watts about his relationship, and Watts stated that he was in a loveless marriage and was the victim of emotional abuse. Bolt felt at the time that Watts was only telling him lies that he thought Bolt wanted to hear. Bolt encouraged Watts to get help and live out and tell people that he was, in fact, a gay man. This is all stuff that anybody could have gleaned. In February of 2018, Watts and Bolt met again. Watts unleashed a lot of information about his wife and told Bolt that he was tired. Watts had bags under his eyes, sweatpants, slippers, and stated that his wife treated him like he was dumb. Bolt told Watts to leave his wife, and Watts retorted with a comment about Bolt and his current boyfriend. Bolt stated that after that conversation, Watts became, in quote, shitty, and made remarks about Bolt in his past. Okay. Alright, so now we're going to, and it doesn't say if he was bewicking or using the work truck or anything for this, hookup. But it does state that Christopher Watts came out with bags under his eyes, sweatpants, and slippers. Yeah, I don't think so. And Christopher Watts said that, before him and his wife stopped, having relations, they used to do it 3 and 4 times a day. And so I don't know when he would have time for these hookups anyway. And by all accounts, Christopher Watts never got tired. And, I mean, it's taken a long time for it to be pretty accepted that Shanann was controlling of him. So, you could say that, well, that wasn't known and whatnot. He was trying to get his 5 minutes of fame. And he put this in as a way. He's probably heard the story a million times from married men. That, it's the same story that, oh yeah, their wives demean them and blah, blah, blah. He's heard it. And so he's repeating it. He went everywhere with this story. Everywhere they give him a paycheck. In March or April of 2018, Watts and Bolt had another meeting. They talked for 20 minutes. They both performed oral sex on each other. They also had sex in the Buick car. Oh. So, in the Karen car, it's made roomy enough for 2 men of, was Christopher Watts 5'10", 6 foot? Bolt, maybe the same, can plow each other in the back of the Buick, in the Buick car. I don't see how, but I mean, not that I want anybody to send me pictures or anything. I mean, oh, well, what a visual. I won't ever look at a Buick the same way. Bolt thought that it was approximately 11:30 p.m. and it was in the Centera parking lot near Highway 34 and I-25. So if you're out about 11 at night in a parking lot in a Buick, do you think that you're going to be having man on man sex? Side note, you know where I, go all over Hell's Half Acre for, um, taking my kiddo fishing, and I was using, the porta potties, the disgusting porta potties, because, out in the middle of nowhere, there's nothing else, right? And I kept like seeing these like foil packs. I think I've even told you guys this. These like foil packs like near like the outsides of them. I'm like, well, what are they? So I picked up one, and it was for this drug, and it was like slidinil or whatever. And I'm like, what is that? What is that? And I googled it, and it's freaking generic, um, Viagra. So I think that there's a lot of well, rump ranging in porta potties. And so if you see one of those rocking, don't be going up there to just, be a nice normal mom to take a pee because you're on a road trip and there's nowhere else. Okay? You're just be a lot safer just crouching behind a tree. I've I've decided that that's the way to go, because after seeing all those foil packs that I did, I'm like, why? What is this? Some kind of marker for porta potties? Like that? Why are these things always there? What are they? And I mean, they would be like those little foil packs. I don't know if those are samples or that's how they're sold, whatever. I don't know if that's how they come on the internet. But yeah, yeah. Who would think that you needed them for a porta potty? Oh, yes, when a Buick isn't nearby, in a parking lot, you know, because there wouldn't be cops or anybody else driving by. Bolt remembered that Watts told him, I'm going to go home and kiss my wife, and she's going to taste you in my mouth. Bolt was immediately mad at Watts for saying that. That's just disgusting. From that meeting onward until May, Watts kept texting Bolt and apologizing for his comment about his wife tasting Bolt. Watts also insinuated that he was trying to find a way to leave his wife, Shanann. Bolt stated that he thought he was using telephone number blah blah blah, well, 307-277-9210 with Watts until November to December of 2017. From that point on, Bolt thought he might have used telephone number 307 and is redacted. Bolt initially stated that the sex was consensual and not for money. And Bolt then stated that during one time they met, Watts gave Bolt $60, but it was only in relation to a comment Bolt made about having lost a debit cash card. Bolt described Watts as having a regular build when they first met, and Watts had a tummy that wasn't hard. He stated that he remembered Watts having plaid gray and black boxer brief underwear. He described Watts as somewhat hairy and had a happy trail from his belly button to his groin area. Okay, that's not uncommon for a dark-haired man. Watts talked about going on vacations to Washington, West Coast, Central America, Canada, North Carolina. Okay, hold on. Central America. Watts liked to hike and go camping. When did he ever do that? Yes, with Nikki, he did camp overnight and they did that, okay? Outside of that, doesn't seem like it ever happened. despite the expansive, beautiful state they were in, didn't look like Shanann was the camping kind of type, right? And I don't think that she went on hikes, and he was basically not free to leave. He had a lot of chores he had to do. So that's not true. Like I say, prison isn't that different for him. That's why he's not interested in changing his situation. Bolt stated that Watts told him that his last year in college was around 2012, 2013, and that he was now proud to be an oil rig worker. Watts told Bolt that he had one homosexual experience in high school, but it was only once. Stated that he was less than 100% truthful during the earlier parts of the interview with S.A. Coder and S.A. Tambergler. He stated that he did, in fact, meet Watts for sex and that he was then paid for. He stated that he and Watts met for sex on multiple occasions and that Watts paid for sex on multiple occasions. Okay, there's the big thing, because with the bankruptcy before Cece was even born, they had $40 left over. Okay? That's not going to be tagged for Christopher Watts to go and have homosexual sex. Okay? Not in the budget. It is not in the budget. And the fact that we know that Shanann Watts, even when they worked at Ford, they knew to go ahead and walk the paycheck that Watts had earned right over to her, because he never even got to see his paycheck. I have no doubt that it was auto deposited straight from Anadarko, and she was doing what she was doing with the money, which included airfare and hotel and everything else where she was going to these Thrive things, because as it's becoming more and more clear, that's the part that wasn't paid for, and she didn't earn most of it. And or else, why wasn't she making her house payment? And why was the Lexus leased to his name if she earned it? And why wasn't she making the HOA payment of $50 that was like up to what, $1,500? When that was something that she signed and agreed and knew exactly where it went to, as stated in the bankruptcy paperwork, and she had been previously making it. No budget for homosexual sex. And then that's when she quit her job on the outside too. And then that's when they started taking on $10,000 a year for daycare. So no, no, and no. When this big bill comes out for the salmon and beer for $60 or whatever is a big thing, he's not going to be like, hey, I need some money to go and have sex in the back of a Buick in a parking lot. Okay, honey, not gonna do it. So anyway, Bolt stated that Watts was physically violent during sex. uh, no. On more than one occasion, Watts was physically aggressive with Bolt and held him down as he had sex with Watts. Watts also held Bolt down on his back and choked Bolt's neck during intercourse to the point that Bolt had to fight Watts off. Oh my, come on. Are you going to win a freaking Emmy for this? Come on. For additional details of the interview, refer to the digital recording of the interview. No, thank you. The only thing good about that is that Tambergler had to hear that. So anyway, it says Chris W. message Trent Bolt. It says first message, hey, how's it going? Spacing in GPS estimate 13 miles, front loaded, blah blah blah. So it's just must have been the notes they were taking there. Found out about Shanann and ended it. Originally got me face shots, green shirt, somewhat asked about something to Chris if profile said straight. Chris said he wasn't sure if he was gay or not. Dad talked about kids 2 and 4, was ready to end it or not. First meet up, blah blah blah, mid June. First shut off to no belly. Worried Chris might not like him. Took Thrive. Several patches. Chris something patch. Started details about what he likes. Wearing something men's. Piercings or whatever. Tribal tattoos on back of arms. Tribal further than shoulder blades. Something. Trent gave. Blah, blah, blah. July 4th was after. No way. Then let's say Chris came in for 250 messages apologizing. So yeah, this is just the notes that they took, that everything is all printed out. And then he wrote off into the side thing and he said eyes, and he pointed to this. So I don't know if he said that like Trent's eyes did something. I don't know. This isn't in there. It says September mid, Chris had a from that Insta and texted Trent, suggested a restaurant. Trent was still at work at TJ's. Who took Johnny oral sex, then blew Chris. Chris got really shady. Couldn't imagine doing that to me or my girls. Asked for Xanax. Trent denied. Eventually met his current boyfriend and began Money and Love. Chris was something about sex. Late November to December, beyond that Chris talked again. And then it says, let's meet FB packed, and then YHLN interview. So that's the thing, because then it says during Thanksgiving, Chris talked about Chris's dad, talked about rough relationship and dad being tough and a Nancy boy. And it says Merry Christmas text, the New Year's Eve text, New Year's Eve dinner, be safe not drinking. The next time at Allen, an apartment in Centera, parked, caught up, space and dating, small talk in Chris's truck, jeans and whatever, Chris unbuttoned pants, Trent denied. Days later, meet up again, 20 to 25 minutes, Buick LaCrosse, gunmetal. Daughters were with him. Blah, blah, blah. Chris, introduce yourself. Blah, blah, pacifier, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, he went on HLN. I remember, I think it was Jane Velez Mitchell interviewing him. And, oh, God, she had some terrible haircuts. Jane Velez Mitchell, they did her dirty. Now her hair is grown out and she looks better. But I saw him on Entertainment Tonight. I mean, everywhere. So he made some money on this. And let's see. Then let's see. It says over here, eliminate bed, pay for sex. Can't see. Nervous on TV. Chris did not talk about 215, 216. Explain. It says what kind of underwear. It says boxers or briefs. Plaid and black boxes, boxer briefs. Somewhat hairy. A happy trail. Then Central America, not Cali, Vacations, Washington Coast, not Cali. Ray says no. Hobbies, hiking, camping, wishes, social media, drowse, insecurities, fan of music, events. Last year in college just did and got good pay. Proud to be an oil rig worker. Ran away together, his house. Prior gay sex in high school. Tattoos. Trent goes to something of his forearm. Nothing else looked old. Something. Protein. And then it says eyes, and it shows like one arrow up and one out. And I remember Trent's eyes being bulgy. I remember that, and him just being obnoxious, and just bulging eyes. Just not. I didn't find him believable. I mean, if he can prove these by text messages and whatever, then okay. Might explain why Christopher Watts is not trying to get out then, because he's very happy where he's at, because he's just able to have boyfriends, and there you go. But you know what? It's not true. So now what does this say? It says here, because this is a supplemental report from Baumhover. What does it say? It says the following information was documented at the time it was gathered. The date of this report is not indicative of when the investigation occurred. It says on 8/17/18 at approximately 1000 hours, I arrived at the McKee Medical Center in North Boise, Loveland, Colorado, for the purposes of attending the autopsies of Shanann Bella and Celeste Watts. Refer to the coroner's sign-in sheet for a list of attendees. Prior to the scheduled autopsies, I requested from CBI agent in charge Kirby Lewis, a CBI crime scene analyst, to ask to attend the purposes of photography and evidence collection. Crime scene analyst Eric Bryant was assigned to the task. Refer to his report for additional details. During the autopsy of Shanann Watts, the remains of a fetus was recovered and immediately restored in a cooled environment. Shortly thereafter, laboratory manager Aaron Koenig arrived at the McKee Medical Center to take custody of the fetus and transport it directly to the CBI lab. I completed a handwritten cover letter and the RFLE, request for laboratory examination form, and provided the documents to Aaron. Subsequent to all 3 autopsies being performed, I took custody of evidence collected by Bryant. It should be noted that a metal container storing Celeste's clothes was not transferred to me at that time. It was transferred from the McKee Medical Center to the Frederick Police Department, evidenced by Sergeant Ian Albert at a later time. While en route to the Frederick Police Department, I contacted Commander Egan to inform him several items required drying prior to be stored in evidence. Doesn't say stored, store. Specifically, the items that needed to be dried were Shanann's clothes and a sheet placed in the cadaver bag when her body was exhumed. Commander Egan arranged with the Longmont Police Department the use of their evidence drying closets locate within their police department. Not located, locate. Upon my arrival at the Frederick Police Department, I met with FPD evidence technician Amanda Purcell to advise her of the perishable evidence items that needed immediate preservation. I also met with RFD Officer Perez, who was assigned to transport the evidence needed to be dried to the Longmont Police Department. Refer to his and FPD's Officer Coonrod's reports for more details regarding the transportation and the drying process of this evidence. Nothing further, Detective Baumhover. And then we have something here in a supplemental report, and it is from Christopher John Ostrander. And it says that the following information was documented at the time it was gathered. The date of this report is not indicative of when the investigations occurred. On 8/16/18, while at the Survey 319 oil tank, I spoke with vacuum truck driver Chris Ostrander. Chris worked for Complete Energy Services Incorporated and was on site to vacuum the crude oil from the catch pan the east oil tank was drained into. I asked Chris about the oil well site process and what prompts him to respond to a specific oil well site. Chris explained Complete Energy Services is contracted by Anadarko Petroleum to remove the oil and or water from the oil tanks and separators located at many oil well sites. I asked Chris how often he was called in to drain the tanks at Survey 319. He said it's not a high producing oil well, so it's not as often as most others. Chris said the last time he was at Survey 319 was on 8/14/18 at approximately 1400 to vacuum the pit, which is a tank to contain the water separated from the crude oil. I asked Chris if he noticed anything different or unusual at that time. Chris said an Anadarko operator arrived at the site shortly after he did and parked east of the oil pump ahead. Chris said that was unusual because he had never seen anyone park that far away from the tank area. It should be noted that the area Chris described is also adjacent and near the area where Shanann's body was recovered. Chris said he didn't recognize the person but was convinced that he was an Anadarko employee because he was driving a dark full-size pickup consistent with Anadarko trucks. Chris said that he spoke with the man who told him, Chris, he was looking for a wrench he lost from leaving it on his rear bumper or tailgate to check on things. I asked Chris if he was able to get the man's name. Chris said he did not, but the man signed his electronic JSA form. When asked, Chris explained that a JSA form is a job safety analysis document he completes for each site he works at. When an Anadarko employee is also present at a job site, he requests they sign the electronic form. Chris said once his JSA form was signed, he went back to vacuuming the holding tank and the unidentified Anadarko employee drove off. I asked Chris if he'd be able to get a copy of the JSA form for that specific visit. He said that he likely could, and shortly thereafter informed me that it was available and could be emailed to me. After I provided my email address to Chris, I received an email from Brett Redis, Complete Energy Services, at 11:19 hours with the associated JSA form attached. I opened the attachment and observed two typed names with signatures below. The first was Chris's name and signature, and the second was Troy McCoy's name and signature. I contacted Commander Egan at the FPD and informed him of what I had learned and requested someone contact and interview Troy McCoy about his presence at the Survey 319 site on 8/14/18 at 11:21 hours. I forwarded via email to Commander Egan the JSA form I was provided via email. Nothing further. Detective Dave Baumhover, TAC 11, TAC 02. Okay, so then there's the handwritten where he must have been jotting this down in his little pad in his front pocket, like those policemen do. And it says Chris Ostrander, JSA form, 1400-ish, backed up to whatever, blah, 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 asked him to sign it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we got all that. And then we have the ID of Christopher John Ostrander. And then we have another something here. It is the Complete Energy Services, and it's where Christopher Ostrander was. And let's see here who was there. Vacuum truck, pulled it out. Said that, what he needed for this, what he used was a 4-gas monitor, a hard hat, safety glasses, gloves, safety toe boots, and FRC clothing. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, how did Christopher Watts open up those tanks and not need any of that stuff. But anyway, it's hazards and mitigation said yes, and it said traffic, and actions to eliminate and mitigate driving hazards. It said defensive driving and to stay alert. All right. And it said, it's our overhead lines, no. Fall potential, example, getting in and out of the truck, climbing stairs, yes. Please explain specific fall hazard, tall truck. Actions taken to eliminate, mitigate fall hazard. Watch your footing and be careful. There you go. Fire explosion potential, yes. And explain the specific fire explosion hazard. It says flammable liquids and gas is present on site. And to eliminate and mitigate those things, to elimination ignition sources and connect static ground on truck. It says there's high noise level. It says it's a noisy pump. You use hearing protection when near pump for an extended period of time. It says that there's a toxic gas exposure. There's toxic gases emitted from the tank and pump. It says vent gases away from work area and downwind. This makes you wonder, did Christopher smell like toxic gases and oil when he met his coworkers just after being there with opening 2 big-ass oil tanks by himself? Did he have the smell of oil on him? Is that a common odor out there? And then it says here, he has a little drawing of how he came in. And then it says here, Hazard Scout, blah, blah, blah. And the supplemental says, this supplemental report was generated solely for the purposes of generating item numbers for another batch of CDs to be given to DA investigator Kathy Holscher. This batch of CDs contained a total of 28 discs. And then the incident report has assist the other agency, and it says, on September 21st, Officer Cooksey, who was working my assigned shift with the Tacona Police Department, at about 21:06 hours, I assisted the Frederick Police Department with searching the residence located at 2825 Saratoga Trail, City of Frederick, County of Weld, State of Colorado, 80516. The residence was searched due to circumstances reported to the Frederick Police Department about a possible trespass or burglary with a person still inside. No one was found inside the house. Reference Frederick Police Department. And that was just that September lady crap. And then Fratelli says that they did the same thing. Neighbor saw a person drive up in the car, get up and walk to the house. Garage lights on. And they looked under the beds, searched closets, turn on lights, open doors, close doors and turn off the lights. The residence was secured at 2124, no persons inside. Then we got another supplemental here. What do we have here? From Dan Boyle. Description of Kelly Carmen. Okay, what do we got here? What do we got? Nothing? Okay, what do we have? Miscellaneous documents included with this supplemental report are the jail log reports. Okay. On 9/21/18, I received Watts's jail log reports, JLog, from Nicole Morrill, WCSO, involving dates 8/16 to 9/20/18. These reports are initialized by jail deputies on a daily basis, and they document their observations and interactions with inmate Watts. The reports consistently reflect Watts as a very polite and compliant. Hold on. The reports consistently reflect Watts as very polite and compliant. Watts reads his Bible and did receive additional reading material, namely the body of evidence. End of report. DB. Yeah, not aggressive like Bolt says he is. There's this big, aggressive man in the back of a Buick choking him. And Spillman log report from Weld County Sheriff. J-log observation of behavior. Okay. So it says deputy staff name not, and it says I have observed that he came into the unit and went straight to bed. Inmate Watts received 2 visits from lawyers today as well as inmate services. He was staffed to remain. He has been polite and respectful with the interactions I've had with him. He has been laying down staring at the top of his bunk or sitting on the edge of it staring at the floor. Inmate Watts slept through the shift. He did respond to the face count but did not get up at all. These are just his daily things. Okay, now we got a bigger one. It says, Inmate Watts has been respectful and polite during my interactions with him. I have seen him a few times during my walks, staring at the floor, at the wall, or in front of him blankly. I have asked him a few times if he was doing all right or if he needed to talk. He said no, whilst giving a thumbs up. He was staffed today by inmate services to remain on. Redacted. Throughout the day, while doing my walks, I noticed Watts staring blankly in front of him again. I opened his cell door and let him know what I've seen over the last few hours and told him that it was concerning. He said he was fine, he was just thinking about things, and he's trying to exercise to keep busy. I told him that's a good idea and reassured him that if he needs to talk to someone, he needs to let the deputy know so we can make sure he's taken care of. He said he appreciated it. I asked him if he was feeling suicidal, and he told me that no, he was not. I then asked him if he would let us know if he was, in which he told us that he'll definitely know. Sorry guys, but that's just sad. Nobody saw this man as the type of man who needs to live his life in prison. This is a man who, I watched this documentary. It's called The Perfect Victim. And it's so sad because it shows women who are domestic violence victims. They don't belong in prison either. Okay? These are women who would never hurt anybody. But they were brutalized. Mentally, physically, sexually, by their spouses over years. And they either or killed their abuser themselves or had their sons kill their abuser in certain circumstances. These women have been behind bars for decades. Because when they were put in, you could not use the defense of battered wife syndrome, now called battered spouse syndrome. Couldn't use it because what happened in the house was private. And they saw that, as the man controls what happens in the house. Now, if they would have went for that it would have shown a motive. So, like this one lady said, talked about her abuse, and that's why she did it. And the lawyer was like, "You will not say that. You say that, and you're going to go to prison for life. You know, you will not say that." Well, she went to prison for life anyway. And then all these other people, it shows that they were advised that no, because it's this risk, because then you're admitting that you did it, but they wouldn't let you know why you did it. Like, you couldn't both say that, yeah, I did it, because then you couldn't say why. It was not seen as a defense. There are people who belong in prison. And if the first version of his story isn't what really happened, then he doesn't have a chance of ever getting out. If the first version of what happened, what he said, is true, I truly believe that his conduct as an inmate, as a person in society, could be argued for him to have been a victim of battered spouse syndrome. We saw it with Johnny Depp. Now, I was expecting a lot of the Johnny Depp trial to really show him as the victim, and I think that it fell short on a lot of things. I think that in a lot of ways he was kind of flippant and such in the courtroom, and showed that these fights kind of went both ways. Yeah, he started a lot of stuff, but then the two of them were just toxic together, and they would, give as good as they got on a lot. Both. I mean, I'm not saying that he was not a victim. I'm just saying that the two of them were a toxic combination. It should have never been together. But I just don't see that it painted him as a true victim in the ways that the headlines were going to make it out to be. I think that if you were to see the amount of deceit, deception, emasculating, verbal and mental, emotional abuse to this man of a gentle nature, I think it would be something that a good attorney could overturn. I really do. His parents raised him good. He was a good student. He was a good mechanic. He was a good person. He did everything right. Somebody came into his life who was a little bit wild and took advantage of him. I don't like hearing of anybody being incarcerated. I mean, unless they have done, and of course, I can imagine, the haters out there right now, listening to this and taking clips like, oh yeah, you don't think this monster that did this to his children. I know that there's a bigger story. There's a much bigger story. The actions and the personality of this man do not add up to what happened. He does not fit the profile of a family annihilator. Something happened. He was in a pressure cooker. There's nothing here that makes me believe that he... I don't know. I don't know. We need to have preventive programs. We need to have resources for people, men and women, juveniles, before they feel this desperate. There's got to be ways out. It says Watts keeps to himself. He's very calm and polite all day long. He will respond when staff asks him questions in a respectful manner. Christopher laid on his bunk and slept through the shift. He wakes up and acknowledges deputies and medical staff when they address him. He has not been actively attempting to harm himself during the shift. says the subject of quiet behavior, and it says inmate Watts either sat quietly or slept in his bunk all day. The only time he talked was to say thank you for lunch and to ask for toilet paper. Inmate refused medication. Inmate Watts refused his hour out tonight when they offered by myself and SOG Deputy Penny. He rested most of the shift, only speaking when he needed toilet paper. He was respectful and did not engage in any self-harming behavior. Let me see how long is. So he asked for toilet paper on Sunday at 5:18. 15:18, so that'd be 3:18. He asked for toilet paper at 23, so why is that stuff? I'm just wondering if that shit is ridding his body and getting out of all the toxins, because why is he needing extra toilet paper like that? Twice in a shift. Then it says, August 21st, during a routine walkabouts early in the shift, I observed inmate Watts, Christopher, sitting up in his bunk reading a book. The last 2 days he's been laying down, staring in front of him, or sleeping. I approached him and shared my observation, and he informed me that he was just given the book today. Having a book to read seems to have significantly improved inmate Watts' demeanor. So here we are at August 21st. We know that he was not being given the letters that I narrated, and how many more, because the ones from his parents aren't there, and his parents definitely sent them. So this is exactly what I was speaking about earlier, is that he felt that everybody believed that he was this monster, that nobody had any concerns about there being more to the story, or encouraging him to fight and to tell the truth. And what did he have to lose? What did he have to lose by telling the truth? That's the big question here. August 22nd. Inmate Watts, Christopher, had a professional visitor tonight. I asked him after he was finished how his court from earlier today had gone. He said it had not gone well, but appeared to be content with it. He asked me how my day was, and I responded by telling him I'm here and alive, so I can't complain. He proceeded to ask how many days I work in a typical week here at the jail. I told him the work week is typically 5 days, and he said okay and entered his cell. I told him to have a good night, and he began to read his book in the cell and later went to sleep. Inmate returned from court. This is Wednesday, August 22nd. He was given an opportunity to prepare with a shower early in the morning. He read his book after the shower and when he returned to his cell. He doesn't hang around or make conversation with others. He was quiet and polite when he returned from court. He reads his book standing at times. Inmate was seen this morning by Brandon. He was asked to call his public defender twice this morning, which he did. TAC 1487, female voice. The first call lasted over 10 minutes. There was an inmate laying on the floor next to the telephone. He was given his hour out and took a shower. After showering, he returned to his cell. He finished one book and asked if he could get another, and it was accommodated. After dinner, he dozed off, but was seen reading shortly after 17:15. He is quiet and polite. He was asked to place a phone call to his attorney at 17:25 hours and was given the opportunity to make the call. It lasted less than 2 minutes, and he returned to his cell without issue. August 23rd, Inmate Watts, Christopher, has been quiet throughout the shift. He asked for toilet paper once at approximately 1900, which I promptly provided him. He continues to read in his bunk and refrains from any self-harming behavior. Inmate spent most of the night reading in his bunk. Inmate appeared to sleep through the night. August 24th. August 23rd. Requested that he have his hour out in this unit. He stated he would only need to take a shower and then return to his cell. I informed him that his hour outs would be upstairs. Inmate Watts tried to manipulate the situation by stating that he would just be real quick and that he wouldn't talk with anyone. I repeated this hour out would be done upstairs. He accepted and went back to his book. See how that's trying to manipulate? Inmate refused hour out today and decided to sleep. I have had no issues with this inmate, and he has complied with every directive given. I'm going to see who said that he was a problem. Tippets, okay. Let's see, this Tippett seems to have. And this says on 8/26, so these aren't in order at all. It says narrative today at approximately 10:30 hours. Inmate Watts had a professional visitor. All the windows were closed. Plastic bags were used to block visibility and to provide privacy to Inmate Watts. Oh, what kind of professional was that? Then on the 26th, it says Inmate Watts had a visit with his public defender today with no issues from him or the other inmates in S-Pod. And then on August 28th, it said, Christopher was quiet when I took over this afternoon. He spent most of the day reading. He did eat dinner. The housing unit as a whole was quite rambunctious today and around dinner time, but Watts did not engage with any of this and just kept to himself. He had a VPRO that started late this evening. I summoned the SOG deputies to escort him to the VPRO room in accordance with the security memo, and we shut all the sliders on the cell doors during the VPRO room to maintain compliance with the security memo. The housing unit was very upset about having their sliders shut indefinitely because of this VPRO room, and the unit made their collective feelings clear by booing Watts when he came out of the room. I'm going to stop now because I need a moment. It's just too sad. Okay, guys, thank you so much for being with me for part 34, and we will pick up 35. Thank you for listening.